Correspondent Dana Bash. We also asked Republicans and independents nationwide to share their questions for the candidates. We teamed up with Facebook to send a campaign camper across the country over the past several weeks. Thousands of people stepped inside and recorded their questions on video. Millions more have weighed in on Facebook. Candidates, I'll try to make sure each of you gets your fair share of questions. You'll have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer and 30 seconds for follow-ups and rebuttals. I'll give you time to respond if you're singled out for criticism. Our viewers should know that we have timing lights that are visible to the candidates to warn them when their time is up. And as the candidates requested, a bell will sound like this. We know you are all eager to jump in and debate these important issues, so please wait until you're called on. These 9 Republicans are positioned on stage based on their ranking in the recent polls. So let's begin right now. I'd like to invite each candidate to introduce himself or herself to our audience. You'll have 1 minute. First, to you, Senator Paul.
The question is, how do we keep America safe from terrorism? Trump says we ought to close that internet thing. The question really is, what does he mean by that? Like they do in North Korea? Like they do in China? Rubio says we should collect all Americans' records all of the time. The Constitution says otherwise. I think they're both wrong. I think we defeat terrorism by showing them that we do not fear them. I think if we ban certain religions, if we censor the internet, I think that at that point the terrorists will have won. Regime change hasn't won. Toppling secular dictators in the Middle East has only led to chaos and the rise of radical Islam. I think if we want to defeat terrorism, I think if we truly are sincere about defeating terrorism, we need to quit arming the allies of ISIS. If we want to defeat terrorism, the boots on the ground need to be Arab boots on the ground. As Commander-in-Chief, I will do whatever it takes to defend America. But in defending America, we cannot lose what America stands for. Today is the Bill of Rights anniversary. I hope we will remember that and cherish that in the fight on terrorism.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Carson.
Thank you, Wolf. Just last weekend, a friend asked one of my daughters, do you like politics? And my daughter said, no, I don't. And the reason I don't like it is because there's too much fighting, too much yelling. It's so loud, I don't like it. You know, I turned to my friend and I said, you know, she's really on to something. And when we think about our country and the big issues, Wolf, that we face in this country, creating jobs, making sure people can keep their jobs, the need for rising wages, whether our children, when they graduate from college, can find a job, protecting the homeland, destroying ISIS, rebuilding defense. These are all the things that we need to focus on, but we'll never get there if we're divided. We'll never get there if Republicans and Democrats just fight with one another. Frankly, we are Republicans and they're Democrats, but before all of that, we're Americans. And I believe we need to unify in so many ways to rebuild our country, to strengthen our country, to rebuild our defense, and for America to secure its place in the world for us, for our children, and for the next generation. Thank you.
Governor Christie.
Thank you, Wolf. America has been betrayed. We've been betrayed by the leadership that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have provided to this country over the last number of years. Think about just what's happened today. The second largest school district in America, in Los Angeles, closed based on a threat. Think about the effect that that's going to have on those children when they go back to school tomorrow, wondering, filled with anxiety about whether they're really going to be safe. Think about the mothers who will take those children tomorrow morning to the bus stop, wondering whether their children will arrive back on that bus safe and sound. Think about the fathers of Los Angeles, who tomorrow will head off to work and wonder about the safety of their wives and their children. What has Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton done to this country? That the most basic responsibility of an administration is to protect the safety and security of the American people. I will tell you this. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I've fought terrorists and won, and when we get back in the White House, we will fight terrorists and win again, and America will be safe.
Ms. Fiorina.
Like all of you, I'm angry. I'm angry at what's happening to our nation. Citizens, it's time to take our country back. Bombast and insults won't take it back. Political rhetoric that promises a lot and delivers little won't take it back. All of our problems can be solved. All of our wounds can be healed by a tested leader who is willing to fight for the character of our nation. I have been tested. I have beaten breast cancer. I have buried a child. I started as a secretary. I fought my way to the top of corporate America while being called every B word in the book. I fought my way into this election and onto this debate stage while all the political insiders and the pundits told me it couldn't be done. I've been told no all my life, and all my life I've refused to accept no as an answer. Citizens, it is time to take our country back from the political class, from the media, from the liberal elites. It can be done. It must be done. Join me, and we will get it done.
Governor Bush.
Our freedom is under attack. Our economy is underwater. The leading Democrat is under investigation. And America is under the gun to lead the free world to protect our civilized way of life. Serious times require strong leadership. That's what's at stake right now. Regarding national security, we need to restore the defense cuts of Barack Obama, to rebuild our military, to destroy ISIS before it destroys us. Regarding economic security, we need to take power and money away from Washington, D.C., and empower American families so that they can rise up again. Look, America still is an exceptional country. We love to lead and we love to win. And we do it when we take on any challenge and when we support our friends. As president, I will keep you and our country safe, secure, and free. Thank you.
Senator Rubio.
Thank you, Wolf. It's really amazing to be back in Las Vegas. I spent 6 years here as a child growing up. Not far from where we stand tonight, I used to sit in the porch of our home and listen to my grandfather tell stories as he smoked one of his 3 daily cigars. One of the things my grandfather instilled in me is that I was really blessed because I was a citizen of the greatest country in the history of all mankind. But there have always been people in American politics that wanted America to be more like the rest of the world. And in 2008, one of them was elected president of this country. And the result has been a disaster. Today, you have millions of Americans that feel left out and out of place in their own country, struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, called bigots because they hold on to traditional values. And around the world, America's influence has declined. While this president's destroyed our military, our allies no longer trust us, and our adversaries no longer respect us. And that is why this election is so important. That is why I'm running for president. And that's why I'm going to ask you for your vote tonight. If you elect me president, we will have a president that believes America is the greatest country in the world, and we will have a president that acts like it.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Wolf. America is at war. Our enemy is not violent extremism. It is not some unnamed malevolent force. It is radical Islamic terrorism. We have a president who is unwilling to utter its name. The men and women on this stage, every one of us, is better prepared to keep this nation safe than is Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. We need a president who understands the first obligation of the commander-in-chief is to keep America safe. If I am elected president, we will hunt down and kill the terrorists. We will utterly destroy ISIS. We will stop the terrorist attacks before they occur because we will not be prisoners to political correctness. Rather, we will speak the truth. Border security is national security, and we will not be admitting jihadists as refugees. We will keep America safe.
Dr. Carson.
Thank you, Wolf. Please join me for a moment of silence in remembrance of the San Bernardino victims. Thank you. You know, our country, since its inception, has been at war every 15 or 20 years. But the war that we are fighting now against radical Islamic jihadists is one that we must win. Our very existence is dependent upon that. You know, as a pediatric neurosurgeon, I frequently faced life and death situations and had to come up with the right diagnosis, the right plan, and execute that plan, frequently with other colleagues. Right now, the United States of America is the patient, and the patient is in critical condition and will not be cured by political correctness and will not be cured by timidity. And I am asking the Congress, which represents the people, to declare war on ISIS so that we can begin the process of excising that cancer and begin the healing process and bring peace, prosperity, and safety back to America.
Mr. Trump.
Thank you. I began this journey 6 months ago. My total focus was on building up our military, building up our strength, building up our borders, making sure that China, Japan, Mexico, both at the border and in trade, no longer takes advantage of our country. Certainly would never have made that horrible, disgusting, absolutely incompetent deal with Iran, where they get $150 billion. They're a terrorist nation. But I began it talking about other things, and those things are things I'm very good at, and maybe that's why I'm center stage. People saw it, people liked it, people respected it. A month ago, things changed. Radical Islamic terrorism came into effect even more so than it has been in the past. People like what I say, people respect what I say, and we've opened up a very big discussion that needed to be opened up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since you last debated, Americans have witnessed terror attacks in Paris and San Bernardino. The FBI director says the country now faces the greatest terror threat since 9/11. You all have different approaches to keeping the country safe, and that will be the focus of tonight's debate. Mr. Trump. As you mentioned in your opening statement, part of your strategy is to focus in on America's borders. To keep the country safe, you say you want to temporarily ban non-American Muslims from coming to the United States, ban refugees fleeing ISIS from coming here, deport 11 million people, and wall off America's southern border. Is the best way to make America great again to isolate it from much of the rest of the world?
We are not talking about isolation. We're talking about security. We're not talking about religion. We're talking about security. Our country is out of control. People are pouring across the southern border. I will build a wall. It'll be a great wall. People will not come in unless they come in legally. Drugs will not pour through that wall. As far as other people, like in the migration, where they're going, tens of thousands of people having cell phones with ISIS flags on them, I don't think so, Wolf. They're not coming to this country. And if I'm president, and if Obama has brought some to this country, they are leaving. They're going. They're gone.
Governor Bush, you called Mr. Trump unhinged when he proposed banning non-American Muslims from the United States. Why is that unhinged?
Well, first of all, we need to destroy ISIS in the caliphate. That should be our objective. The refugee issue will be solved if we destroy ISIS there, which means we need to have a no-fly zone, safe zones there for refugees, and to build a military force. We need to embed our forces, our troops, inside the Iraqi military. We need to arm directly the Kurds. And all of that has to be done in concert with the Arab nations. And if we're going to ban all Muslims, how are we going to get them to be part of a coalition to destroy ISIS? The Kurds are the greatest fighting force and our strongest allies. They're Muslim. Look, this is not a serious proposal. In fact, it will push the Muslim world, the Arab world, away from us at a time when we need to re-engage with them to be able to create a strategy to destroy ISIS. So Donald, is great at the one-liners, but he's a chaos candidate, and he'd be a chaos president. He would not be the commander-in-chief we need to keep our country safe.
Mr. Trump.
Jeb doesn't really believe I'm unhinged. He said that very simply because he has failed in this campaign. It's been a total disaster. Nobody cares. And frankly, I'm the most solid person up here. I built a tremendous company, and all I want to do is make America great again. I don't want our country to be taken away from us, and that's what's happening. The policies that we've suffered under other presidents have been a disaster for our country. We want to make America great again. And Jeb, in all fairness, he doesn't believe that.
Look, he mentioned me. I can bring it. I can talk to him. This is the problem. Banning all Muslims will make it harder for us to do exactly what we need to do, which is to destroy ISIS. We need a strategy. We need to get the lawyers off the back of the warfighters. Right now, under President Obama, we've created this standard that is so high that it's impossible to be successful in fighting ISIS. We need to engage with the Arab world to make this happen. It is not a serious proposal to say that to the people that you're asking for their support, that they can't even come to the country to even engage in a dialogue with us. That's not a serious proposal. We need a serious leader to deal with this, and I believe I'm that guy.
Senator Rubio, I'm going to go to Senator Rubio and get his thoughts. So you have said banning Muslims is unconstitutional, but according to a recent ABC News Washington Post poll, a majority of Republicans support Mr. Trump's idea. Why are they wrong?
Well, I understand why they feel that way, because this president hasn't kept us safe. The problem is we had an attack in San Bernardino, and we were paying attention to the most important issue we have faced in this country in a decade, since 9/11, and then all the talk was about this proposal, which isn't going to happen. But this is what's important to do. We must deal frontally with this threat of radical Islamists, especially from ISIS. This is the most sophisticated terror group that has ever threatened the world or the United States of America. They are actively recruiting Americans. The attacker in San Bernardino was an American citizen. Born and raised in this country, he was a health inspector, had a newborn child, and left all that behind to kill 14 people. We also understand that this is a group that's growing in its governance of territory. It's not just Iraq and Syria. They are now a predominant group in Libya. They are beginning to pop up in Afghanistan. They are increasingly involved now in attacks in Yemen. They have Jordan in their sights. This group needs to be confronted with serious proposals. And this is a very significant threat we face, and the president has left us unsafe. He spoke the other night to the American people to reassure us. I wish he hadn't spoken at all. He made things worse, because what he basically said was, we are going to keep doing what we're doing now, and what we are doing now is not working.
Hugh Hewitt, you have a question.
Senator Cruz, you've said you disagree with Mr. Trump's policy. I don't want a cage match. You've tweeted you don't want a cage match, but Republican primary voters deserve to know, with the kind of specificity and responsiveness you delivered in your 9 Supreme Court arguments, how you disagree with Mr. Trump. Will you spell that out with us?
Well, listen, Hugh, everyone understands why Donald has suggested what he has. We're looking at a president who's engaged in this doublespeak, where he doesn't call radical Islamic terrorism by its name. Indeed, he gives a speech after the San Bernardino attack where his approach is to try to go after the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens rather than to keep us safe. And even worse, President Obama and Hillary Clinton are proposing bringing tens of thousands of Syrian refugees to this country when the head of the FBI has told Congress they cannot vet those refugees. I understand why Donald made that proposal. I introduced legislation in the Senate that I believe is more narrowly focused at the actual threat, which is radical Islamic terrorism. And what my legislation would do is suspend all refugees for 3 years from countries where ISIS or al-Qaeda control substantial territory.
So you're saying you disagree because he's too broad and you're having a narrower focus? Why do you disagree with him?
Well, you know, I'm reminded of what FDR's grandfather said. He said, all horse thieves are Democrats, but not all Democrats are horse thieves. In this instance, there are millions of peaceful Muslims across the world in countries like India, where there is not the problems we are seeing in nations that are controlled, have territory controlled by al-Qaeda or ISIS, and we should direct at the problem, focus on the problem, and defeat radical Islamic terrorism. It's not a war on a faith, it's a war on a political and theocratic ideology that seeks to murder us.
Carly Fiorina, this is the Christmas dinner debate. This will be the debate that Americans talk about at Christmas. And thus far, in the first 10 minutes, we haven't heard a lot about Ronald Reagan's city on a hill. We've heard a lot about keeping Americans out, or keeping Americans safe and everyone else out. Is this what you want the party to stand for?
What I think we need to stand for are solutions. I offer myself as a leader to the people of this country because I think they're looking for solutions, not lawyers arguing over laws or entertainers throwing out sound bites that draw media attention. We need to solve the problem. To solve the problem, we need to do something here at home and something over there in their caliphate. We need to deny them territory. But here at home, we need to do two fundamental things. Number one, we need to recognize that technology has moved on. The Patriot Act was signed in 2001, roughly. The iPhone was invented in 2007. The iPad was invented in 2011. Snapchat and Twitter, all the rest of it, have been around just for several years. Technology has moved on and the terrorists have moved on with it. Let me tell you a story. Soon after 9/11, I got a phone call from the NSA. They needed help. I gave them help. I stopped a truckload of equipment. I had it turned around. It was escorted by the NSA headquarters. We need the private sector help. Because government not in ahead and bound. The private sector will help just as I helped after 9/11, but they must be engaged and they must be asked. I will ask them. I know them.
Governor Christie. Americans are more afraid today than at any time since 9/11. As you mentioned in your opening statement today in Los Angeles, 650 school children didn't 1,000 school children didn't go to school because of an email threat. This 2 weeks after an attack killed 14 people in San Bernardino. Is this new normal? And if so, what steps would you take as President of the United States to ensure that fear does not paralyze America?
Wolf, unfortunately, it's the new normal under Barack Obama. The fact is that if you listen to Hillary Clinton the other day, what she said to the American people was, my strategy would be just about the same as the president's. Just about the same as the president's? We have people in this country who are scared to death. Because I can tell you this, as a former federal prosecutor, a Center for the Developmentally Disabled in San Bernardino, California, is now a target for terrorists. That means everywhere in America is a target for these terrorists. Now, I spent 7 years of my life in the immediate aftermath of September 11th doing this work, working with the Patriot Act, working with our law enforcement, working with the surveillance community to make sure that we keep America. What we need to do, Wolf, is restore those tools that have been taken away by the president and others. Restore those tools to the entire surveillance and law enforcement community. We need a president who's going to understand what actionable intelligence looks like. And we need a president and a cabinet who understands that the first and most important priority of the President of the United States is to protect the safety and security of Americans. As someone who has done it, I will make sure it gets done again.
Thank you. Governor Carson. One of the killers in San Bernardino was an American who was not on the watch list. How are you going to find that radicalized person and stop another such attack?
Well, first of all, Wolf, I said in February that we needed to have people on the ground, troops on the ground in a coalition similar to the First Gulf War. I remember when the Egyptian ambassador to the United States stood in the Rose Garden and pledged Arab commitment to removing Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. Before we came out here tonight, I am told the Saudis have organized 34 countries who want to join in the battle against terrorism. First and foremost, we need to destroy ISIS, and we need to do this with our Arab friends and our friends in Europe. And when I see they have a climate conference over in Paris should have been talking about destroying ISIS because they are involved in virtually every country. Now, you destroy ISIS in a coalition, you get joint and European friends, and then here at home, there are things called the Joint Terrorism Task Force, headed by and made up of local law enforcement, including state police. They need the tools, and the tools involve where we cannot hear what they're even planning. And when we see red flags, a father says we got a problem here, then we have to give law enforcement the ability to listen so they can disrupt these terrorist attacks. They occur. We can do this, but we got to get moving. Pay me now or pay me a lot more later.
Thank you.
This is the direction.
Dana Bash, you have the next question.
A crucial question is how to balance surveillance with privacy and keeping Americans safe. Senator Cruz, you voted for a bill that President Obama signed into law just this past June that made it harder for the government to access Americans' phone records. In light of the San Bernardino attack, was your vote a mistake?
Well, Dana, I'm very proud to have joined with conservatives in both the Senate and the House to reform how we target bad guys. And what the U.S. Freedom Act did is it did two things. Number one, it ended the federal government's bulk collection of phone metadata of millions of law-abiding citizens. Two, and the second half of it that is critical, it strengthened the tools of national security to go after terrorists. It gave us greater tools, and we are seeing those tools work. And in particular, what it did is the prior program only covered a relatively narrow slice of phone calls. When you had a terrorist, you could only search a relatively narrow slice of numbers, primarily landlines. The USA Freedom Act expands that, so now we have cell phones, we have internet phones, now we have the phones the terrorists are likely to use, and the focus of law enforcement is on targeting the bad guys. You know, what the administration keeps getting wrong is whenever anything bad happens, they focus on law-abiding citizens instead of focusing on bad guys, on radical Islamic terrorists, and we need to stop them before they carry out acts of terror.
Thank you. Senator Rubio, Senator Cruz is right. There was bipartisan support. You voted against it. So is Senator Cruz wrong?
He is, and so are those that voted for it. There were some that voted for it because they wanted to keep it, and they were afraid the whole fire. Here's the world we live in. This is a radical jihadist group that is increasingly sophisticated. Its ability, for example, to radicalize American citizens, in its ability to exploit loopholes in our legal immigration system, in its ability to capture and hold territory in the Middle East as countries. This is not just the most capable, it is the most sophisticated terror threat we have ever faced. We are now not less tools. And that tool we lost, the metadata program, was a valuable tool that we no longer have at our disposal.
Senator Cruz?
You know, I would note that Marco knows what he's saying isn't true. You know, Mark Levin wrote a column last week that are saying the same thing, that they are knowingly false, and they are in fact Alinsky-like attacks like Barack Obama. And the reason is simple, is that the old program covered 20 to 30% of phone numbers to search for terrorists. The new program covers nearly 100%. That gives us greater ability to acts of terrorism, and he knows that that's the case.
Dana, may I interject?
Senator
Let me be
Rubio,
very
please
careful in
respond.
answering this, because I don't think national television in front of 15 million people to discuss classified information. So let me just be very clear. There is nothing that we are allowed to do under this bill that we could not do before. This bill did, however, take away a tool that allowed the National Security Agency and other intelligence agencies to quickly access phone records and match them up with other phone records to see who terrorists have been calling. Because I promise you, there is an attack on this country. The first thing people are going to want to know is, why didn't we know about it and why didn't we stop it? And the answer better not be because we didn't have access to records or information that would allow us to identify these killers before they attacked us.
Senator Paul,
I know this has been a very big issue for you. You hear many of your colleagues are for increased surveillance by law enforcement. You call that hogwash. Why is that hogwash?
You know, I think Marco gets it completely wrong here. We are not any safer through the bulk collection of all Americans' records. In fact, We get so distracted by all of the information, we're not spending enough time getting specific information. The other thing is the one thing that might have stopped Senator Bernardino, that might have stopped 9/11, would have been stricter controls on those who came here. And Marco has a point, increased security, border security for those who come to our country. On his Gang of Eight, liberalized immigration, but he did not, and he steadfastly opposed any new border security requirements for refugees. Last week, I introduced another bill saying we need more security, we want more scrutiny. Once again, Marco opposed this. So Marco can't have, he wants to be this, oh, I'm great and strong on national defense, but he's the weakest of all the immigration. He is the one for an open border that is leaving us defenseless. If we want to defend the country, we have to defend against who's coming in. Has more of an allegiance to Chuck Schumer and to the liberals than he does to conservative policy.
Senator Rubio.
I want to thank Rand for another 30 seconds because, number one, what he's pointing to is a bill last only 10 people voted for. You know why? Because it's not focused on terrorists. It would have banned anyone from coming here. Someone from Taiwan would not have been able to come here. Two, this program, this metadata program, is actually more strict than what a regular law enforcement has now. If a regular law enforcement agency wants your phone records, all they have to do is issue a subpoena. But now the intelligence is not able to quickly gather records and look at them to see who these terrorists are calling. And the terrorist that attacked us in San Bernardino was an American citizen, raised in this country. And I bet you we wish we would have had access to 5 years of his records so we could see who he was working with before they carried out another attack.
Since I was mentioned in the question, can I respond?
Go ahead, please.
Understands the immigration issue. What I put forward was an amendment that would have temporarily high-risk terrorist countries, but it would have started it up, but I want them to go through global entry, which is a program where we do back. The thing is that every terrorist attack we've had since 9/11 has been legal immigration. Marco wants to. I want more rules, more scrutiny, and to defend the country, you have to defend the border.
Senator, we're going to talk about immigration in a while. But Governor Christie,
don't I get
just
another 30
listening to
seconds?
this,
You mentioned me again.
You heard Senator Paul, Senator Cruz talk about how important it is to protect Americans' privacy, even in a time of grave danger. Why?
Listen, I want to talk to the audience at home for a second. If your eyes are glazing over like mine, this is what it's like to be on the floor of the United States Senate. I'm endless debates about how many angels on the head of a pin from people who've never had to make a consequential decision in an executive position. The fact is, for 7 years, I had to make these decisions after 9/11. Make a decision about how to proceed forward with an investigation or how to pull, whether you use certain actionable intelligence or whether not to. And yet they continue to debate about this bill and in the subcommittee and what. Nobody in America cares about that. What they care about is, are we going to have a president who actually knows what they're doing to make these decisions? And for the 7 years afterwards, New Jersey was threatened like no other region in this country. And what we did was we took actions within the Constitution to make sure that law enforcement had all the information they needed. We prosecuted 2 of the biggest terrorism cases in the world and stopped Fort Dix from being attacked. American radicalized Muslims from a mosque in New Jersey, because we worked with the Muslim American community to get intelligence, and we used the Patriot Act to get other intelligence to make sure we did those cases. This is the difference between actually having been a federal prosecutor, actually doing something, and just spending your life as one of 100 debating it. Let's talk about how we do, not about which bill each one of these guys likes more. The American people don't care about that.
Thank you. Dr. Carson, you're in favor of monitoring mosques and schools where there is anti-American sentiment. What do you consider anti-American?
Well, first of all, let me just complain a little bit. This is the first time I've spoken, and several people have multiple questions, so please try to pay attention to that. Now, as far as monitoring, what my point is, we need to make sure that any place, I don't care, a mosque, a school, a supermarket, a theater, it doesn't matter. If they're engaging in radicalizing activities, then we need to be suspicious of it. We have to get all this piece of stuff And people are worried about somebody's going to say that I'm Islamophobic. This is craziness because we are at war. That's why I asked Congress, go ahead and declare the war. We need to understand that our nation is in grave danger. You know, what the Muslim Brotherhood said in the explanatory memorandum during the Holy Land Foundation trial is that they will take advantage of our PC attitude to get us. And we have to be better.
Dr. Carson, who was right in that little debate we just heard between Senator Rubio and Senator Paul?
I think you have to ask them. I don't want to get in between them. Let them fight.
Wolf, these...
Hold on 1 second. We have a lot more to cover. Everybody's opportunities. Governor Bush, 6 days after 9/11, your brother visited a mosque and said, quote, Islam is peace. The comment about banning Muslims and surveillance of mosques. Are President Bush's words still relevant in today's?
They are relevant if we want to destroy ISIS, if we want to destroy radical Islamic terrorism. We can't disassociate ourselves from peace. If we expect to do this on our own, we will fail. But if we do it in unison with people who also are at risk and threatened by Islamic radical terrorism, we'll be far more successful. Look, the FBI has the tools necessary to monitor un-American activities in our country. They need to be talking about it, to be honest with you, out in the public. Of course they have those capabilities, and we should make sure that we give the FBI, the NSA, our intelligence agencies, all the resources they need to keep us safe. But the main thing we should be focused on is a strategy to destroy. And I laid out at the Reagan Library before the tragedy of Paris and before San Bernardino to do just that. It requires leadership. It's not following its success. It is developing a strategy, leading the world, funding it to make sure that we have a military that's second to none, and making sure that we destroy ISIS there. That's how you keep America safe.
Ms. Fiorina, you were a CEO in Silicon Valley on 9/11. Companies there, they say they won't help the FBI track communications from ISIS. Should they be forced to?
You know, listening to this conversation, let me just say, a lot of about laws, but none of it solves the problem. Let's examine what happened. Why did we miss the Tsarnaev brothers? Why did we miss the couple? It wasn't because we had stopped collecting metadata. It was because I think, as someone who comes from the technology world, we were using the wrong algorithms where the private sector could be helpful, because the government is woefully behind the technology. Secondly, the bureaucratic processes that have been in place since 9/11 are adequate as well. What do we now know? That DHS vets people by going into databases of known or suspected terrorists. And yet we also know that ISIS is not in those databases. So of course we're going to miss them. And then we now learn that DHS says, no, we can't check their social media. For heaven's sakes, every parent in America is checking social media. And every employee as well, but our government can't do it. The bureaucratic procedures are so far behind. Our government has been incompetent, unresponsive, corrupt, and that incompetence, ineptitude, lack of a is now dangerous. It is why we need a different kind of leadership in the White House that understands bureaucracies competent again.
But my question was, should these Silicon Valley companies be forced to cooperate with the FBI?
They do not need to be forced. They need to be asked to bring and brightest, the most recent technology to the table. I was asked as a CEO. I complied happily, and they have not been asked. That's why it cost billions of dollars to build an Obama, because the private sector wasn't asked.
Mr. Trump, you recently suggested closing that internet up, those were your words, as a way to stop ISIS from recruiting online. Are you referring to actual portions of the internet? Some say that would put the U.S. in line with China and North Korea.
Well, so easy to answer. ISIS is recruiting through the internet. ISIS is using the internet better than we are using the internet, and it was our idea. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get our brilliant people from Silicon Valley and other places out a way that ISIS cannot do what they're doing. You talk freedom of speech, you talk freedom of anything you want. I don't want internet to take our young, impressionable youth and watching the media talking about how they're masterminds. These are mastermind. These are thugs. These are terrible people in ISIS, not masterminds. And we have to change it from every standpoint. But we should be using our brilliant people, our most brilliant minds, to figure a way that ISIS cannot. Then on second, we should be able to penetrate the internet and find out exactly where ISIS is and everything. And we can do that if we use our good people.
Let me follow up, Mr. Trump. So are you open to closing parts of the internet?
Certainly be open to closing areas where we are at war with somebody. I sure as hell don't want to let people that want to kill us and kill our nation. Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. Governor Kasich, is shutting down any part of the internet a good idea?
No, I don't think it is. And I want to go to two other issues. One is the metadata. We know we have to hold this data for a longer period of time. And, you know, in a lot of ways, Chris is right. What a president has to do is take a position. We don't want to err on the side of having less. We want to err on the side of that. That's good for our. In addition to that, Wolf, there is a big problem. It's called encryption. And the people in San Bernardino were communicating with people who the FBI had been watching. Their phone was encrypted because the intelligence officials could not see who they were talking to. It was lost. We have to solve the encryption. Easy. A president of the United States, again, has to bring people together, have a position. We need to be able to penetrate involved in these plots and these plans, and we have to give the local authorities the ability to penetrate, to disrupt. That's what we need. It is a major problem, and Congress has got to deal with this, and so does the president, to keep us safe.
Thank you, Governor. The fight against Islamic terrorists and ISIS has been called the war of our time. So let's talk about how each of you, as Commander-in-Chief, would fight this war and win it. Senator Cruz. You ISIS into oblivion, testing whether, quote, sand can glow in the dark. Does that mean leveling the ISIS capital of Raqqa in Syria, where there are hundreds of civilians?
What it means is using overwhelming air power to utterly and completely destroy ISIS. To put things in perspective, in the first Persian Gulf War, we launched roughly 1,100 air attacks. We carpet bombed them for 37 days, saturation bombing, after which our troops went in, and in a day and a half was left of the Iraqi army. Right now, Obama is launching between 15 and 30 air attacks a day. It is photo op foreign policy. We need to use overwhelming air power. We need to be arming the Kurds. We need to be fighting and killing ISIS where they are. And let me go back to the earlier discussion a minute ago. It's not a lack of competence that is preventing the Obama administration from stopping these attacks. It is political correctness. We did the Facebook posting of the female San Bernardino terrorist because the Obama deal would be inappropriate. She made a public call to jihad, and they didn't target it. The Tsarnaev brothers, the elder brother, made a public call to jihad, and the Obama didn't target it. Nidal Hassan communicated with Anwar al-Awlaki, a known radical cleric, asked about waging jihad against his fellow soldiers. Is because of political correctness, the Obama administration, like a lot of folks here, want to search everyone's emails and not focus on the bad guys, and political correctness is killing people.
Thank you. To be clear, Senator Cruz, would you carpet bomb Raqqa, the ISIS capital, where there are a lot of civilians? Yes, or no?
Carpet bomb where ISIS is, not a city, but the location of the troops. You use air power, special forces to direct the air power, but the object isn't to level a city. The object is to kill the ISIS terrorists, to make it ISIS is gaining strength because the perception is that they're winning, and President Obama fuels that perception. That will change when militants across the globe see that when you join ISIS, that you are giving up your life, you are. We need a president who is focused on defeating every single ISIS terrorist and protecting land, which should be the first priority.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rubio, you've been critical of Senator. His voting record doesn't match his rhetoric. Why?
Well, let me begin by saying that we have to understand who ISIS is. ISIS is a radical Sunni group. They cannot just be defeated through airstrikes. Airstrikes are a key component of defeating them, but they must be defeated on the ground by a ground. That ground force must be primarily made up of Sunni Arabs themselves. Sunni Arabs that reject them ideologically and confront them militarily. We will have to embed additional American special operators alongside them to help them with training, to help them conduct special missions, and to help improve the airstrikes. The airstrikes are important. Force capable of it. And because of the budget cuts we are facing in this country, we are going to be left with the oldest and the smallest Air Force we have ever had. We have to reverse those cuts, in addition to the Navy and in addition to the cuts to our Army as well. And beyond that, I would say we must win the information war against ISIS. Every war we have ever been involved in has a propaganda aspect to it. ISIS is winning the propaganda war. They are recruiting people, including Americans, to join them with the promise that they are joining this great apocalyptic movement that is going to defeat the West. We really like in ISIS territory, and we have to show them why ISIS is not invincible by going out and conducting these attacks, sizing them to the they recruit.
Because I asked the question, Senator, because you said this. You said he, referring to Senator Cruz, voted the Defense Authorization Act every year that it came up, and I assume that if he voted against it, he would veto it as president. That
is accurate. 3 times he voted against the Defense Authorization Act, which is a bill that funds the troops. It also, by the way, funds the Iron Dome and other programs. And I have to assume that if you vote against it in the Senate, you would also veto it as president. He has also supported, by the way, a budget that is called the containment budget. And it is a budget that would radically reduce the amount of money we spend on our military. You can't carpet bomb ISIS if you don't have to attack them with. And if we continue those cuts that we're doing now, not to mention additional cuts, we are going to be left with the oldest and the smallest Air Force this country has ever had. And that leaves us less safe.
Well, you know, Marco has continued these attacks, and he knows they're not true. Yes, it is true that I voted against the National Defense because when I campaigned in Texas, I told voters in Texas that I would oppose having the authority to detain U.S. citizens permanently with no due process. I have repeatedly effort to take that out of that bill, and I honored that campaign commitment. But more broadly, you know, the notion, Mark, that somehow he also has tossed more than a few insults this direction. Let's be absolutely clear. ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism will face no more determined foe than I will destroy them by targeting the bad guys. And one of the problems with Marcos is far too often supported Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama undermining government have helped radical Islamic terrorists. We need to focus on killing the bad guys, not getting stuck in Middle East civil wars. America safe.
Senator Rubio.
Yeah, 3 points of distinction. The first is, if you're an American citizen and you decide to join up with ISIS, we're not going to read your Miranda rights. You're going to be treated as an enemy combatant, a member of an army attacking this country. Number 2, we do need our defense capabilities. It is a fact that the cuts we are facing today and the cuts that Senator Cruz would have supported leave us with an even smaller Navy than the one we are going to be left with. And the final point that I would make is Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's strategy behind. It sounds like what he's outlining is not to lead at all. We cannot continue to outsource foreign policy. We must lead. We are the most powerful nation in the world. We it again.
We're going to have much more on this. We're going to have much more on this, but I want to move now back to Mr. Trump.
This legislation.
Hold on.
On
we have a lot.
detention.
We have a lot to discuss. I want to move to Mr. Trump right now. We have a question on this war against ISIS and how you would fight and win this war. Here's the question from Facebook. Listen to this.
I'm Josh Jacob from Georgia Tech. Trump mentioned that we must kill the families of ISIS members. However, this violates the principle of distinction between civilians and combatants in international law. So my question is, innocent civilians set us apart from ISIS?
Mr. Trump.
We have to be much tougher. We've been. We have people that know what's going on. You take a look at just the attack in California the other day. There were numerous people, including the mother, that they saw a pipe bomb sitting all over the floor. They saw ammunition all over the place. They knew exactly what was going on. When you had Trade Center go, people were put into planes that were friends, family, girlfriends, and they were put into planes to Saudi Arabia. They knew what was going on. They went home and they wanted to watch their boyfriends on television. I would firm with families. And frankly, that will make people think, because they may not care much about their lives, but they, believe it or not, about their families' lives.
Donald, this is not...
Governor Bush, Governor Bush.
This is another example of the lack of seriousness. This is troubling because we're at war. They've declared war on us, and we need to have destroy ISIS. But the idea that that is a solution to this is just crazy. It makes no sense to suggest this. Look, 2 months ago, Donald Trump said that ISIS was not our fight. Just 2 months ago. He said that Hillary Clinton would be a great negotiator with Iran. That's his foreign policy experience from the shows.
Come on,
that is not a serious someone that thinks this through, that can lead our country to safety and security.
Mr. Trump.
Look, the problem is we need toughness. Honestly, I think Jeb is a very nice person. He's a very nice person, but we need intelligence and we need tough. Jeb said when they come across the southern border, they come as an act of love.
You said in September this was not a
am I
not
talking or are you talking, Jeb?
I'm talking right now. I'm talking.
You can go back. You're not talking. You interrupted me,
September 30th,
Are you going to
you said it.
apologize, Jeb? No. To finish?
Yeah, one at a time.
Excuse
Go ahead,
me, am I allowed to finish?
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
So,
Little of your
again,
own medicine.
to build up your energy,
please.
Jeb, but it's not working
One at a time.
Yeah.
Look. Toughness. We need strength. We're not respected as a nation anymore. Level of respect that we need, and if we don't get it back fast, we're just going to go weaker, and just we can't allow that to happen. We need strength. We don't have it. When Jeb comes out and he talks about the border, and I saw it, and I was witness to it, and so was everyone else, and I was standing there. They come across as an act of love. He's saying the same thing right now with radical Islam, and we can't have that in our country. It just won't work. We need strength.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength. Leadership is not about attacking people and disparaging people. Leadership is about creating a serious strategy to deal with the threat of our time. And I laid out that strategy before the attacks in Paris and before the attacks in San Bernardino, and it is the way the way forward. We need to increase our military spending. We need to deal with a no-fly zone in Syria. We need to focus on building a military that is second to none so that we can destroy Islamic terrorism.
With Jeb's attitude, we will never we will never be great again.
All right, Hugh Hewitt at Danabash. Hugh, go ahead with the next question.
Dr. Carson, you mentioned in your opening remarks that you're a pediatric neurologist surgeon. Neurosurgeon. And are inspired by your life story, your kindness, your evangelical core support. We're talking about ruthless things tonight. Toughness, war. And people wonder, could you do that? Could you order airstrikes that would kill innocent children by not the scores, but hundreds of thousands? Could you wage war as a commander-in-chief?
Interestingly enough, you should see the eyes of some of those children when I say, we're going to have to open your head up and take out this tumor. They're not happy about it, believe me. And they don't like me very much at that point. But later on, they love me. Sometimes I sound like him. Later on, they really realize what's going on. And you have to be able to look at the big picture and understand that it's actually merciful. You go ahead and finish the job rather than death by 1,000 pricks.
So you are okay with the deaths of thousands of innocent children and civilians?
You got it. You got it.
That is what war... Can you be as ruthless as Churchill was in prosecuting the war against the Nazis?
Ruthless is not necessarily the word I would use, but tough, resolute, understanding what the problems are, and understanding that the job of the president is to protect the people of this country and to do what is necessary in order to get it done.
Senator, you said ISIS grew stronger because of the hawks in your party. Do you really think that Republicans are allies of ISIS?
I think that by arming the allies of ISIS, the Islamic Assad, that we created a safe space or made that space bigger for ISIS to grow. Who have wanted regime change have made a mistake. When we toppled Gaddafi in Libya, I think that was a mistake. I think ISIS grew stronger. We have a failed state. And I'd like to also go back to, though, another question, which is Donald Trump a serious candidate? I ask this is, if you're going to close the internet, realize, America, what that entails. That entails getting rid of the First Amendment, okay? No small thing. You are going to kill the families of terrorists. Realize that there's something called the Geneva Convention. We're going to have to pull out. It would defy every norm that is America. So when you ask yourself, whoever you are, that think, do you believe in the Constitution? Are you going to change the Constitution?
So, they can kill us, but we can't kill them. That's what you're saying. And as far as the about closing the internet, I'm talking about parts of Syria, parts of Iraq, where ISIS is, spotting. What I like even better than that is getting our smartest and getting our best to infiltrate their, so that we know exactly where they're going, exactly where they're going to be. I like that better, but we have to. Who would be? I just can't imagine somebody booing. These are people that want to kill us, folks, and you're objecting to us infiltrating their. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Senator Paul, I want to go back to my question, which is you saying that ISIS grew stronger because of hawks. And do you think that your own party, the people who you're describing, are responsible for the rise of ISIS?
I think that if you believe in regime, mistaken. In 2013, we put 600 tons of weapons, us, Saudi Arabia, into the war against Assad. By pushing Assad back, we did create a safe space. We had people coming to our Foreign Relations Committee and saying, oh, we need to arm the allies. They are still saying this. It is a crazy notion. This is the biggest debate we should be having tonight. Is it a good idea? Has it been a good idea? There are still people, the majority on the stage, they want to topple Assad. And then they'll will then be in charge of Syria.
Senator, we're going to talk about regime change in a bit, but Governor Kasich, would you like to respond to Senator?
Yeah, let me just suggest to everybody, and I hear, last February, I said we needed to have people on the ground in a coalition with Europe and our allies. Not going to get done just by working with the Sunnis. It's going to get done if we just embed a few people. We have to go massively like we did in the first Gulf War, where we destroyed the ability to take Kuwait. We need to have a coalition that will stand for nothing less than the total destruction. And we have to be the leader. We can't wait for anybody else. I served on the Armed Services Committee, and we must lead or the job won't get done, unfortunately, for our country.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Rubio, let's continue this conversation. This is a critically important issue.
I hope at some point you're going to ask me my strategy
we will get
for
to,
defeating.
we have time, Ms. Fiorina. I want to get Senator Rubio right now. Let's talk about one of the aspects of your strategy. You say the only way to defeat ISIS is with ground forces, primarily of Sunni Arab forces.
Yes.
Those Arab nations, though, as you well know, they've conducted of the airstrikes and actually none since August. What makes you think they are willing to fight on the ground if they're not even willing to fight from the air?
Well, they most certainly will have to be worked on to provide more than what they are doing now. There's no doubt about it. And there's one major reason why they have not been willing to be a part of the coalition, and that is they have lost complete trust and confidence in this president. This president cut a deal with their mortal enemy, the Shia, in Iran. And this is the reason why they no longer trust this president or are willing to work alongside them. But they have as much invested in this as we do, in fact, more so. For it is the king of Saudi Arabia they want to behead first. It's the king of Jordan that they want to dethrone. They want to go into Egypt. They've already gone into Libya. And on another point we need to talk about, Assad is one of the main reasons why ISIS even exists to begin with. Assad is a puppet of Iran. He's been so brutal towards the Sunni within Syria that he created the space that led for the people of Syria themselves to stand up and try to overthrow him. That led to the chaos, which allowed ISIS to come in and take advantage of that and grow more powerful. And the fact that this president led from behind meant there were no alternative groups on the ground to be empowered, leaving ISIS operating space they needed to become the force they have now become.
That's just factually incorrect.
Stand. Ms. Fiorina, the former Defense Secretary Bob Cates says the chances of getting Sunni Arab forces on the ground to get the job done, chances very remote. What's your strategy?
Well, first, I'll just point out tough is not the same as being strong. And to wage war, we need a commander-in-chief in tough times and stood up to be held accountable over and over, not first-term senators who never made an executive decision in their life. One of the things we do, in addition to defeating them here at home, is bring back the warrior class, Petraeus, McChrystal, Mattis. Every single one of these generals I know, every one was retired early because they told President Obama things they want to hear. We must have Sunni Arabs involved in this coalition. We must commit leadership, strength, support, and resolve. That Margaret Thatcher once said, if you want something talked about, if you want something done, ask a woman.
Thank you. Governor Christie, what's your strategy?
Well, you know, you sit up here and you listen to this stuff and you think that so many of these people who have had so much to do in this national they talk like they were bystanders. You know, we talk about our military being degraded over time, and yet we've had folks on the stage who've been who have participated in sequester, who participated in the degrading of this military over time. And that's so frustrated with Washington, D.C. now. That's why they're so angry with the electorate, so angry with everybody who's involved in government in Washington, D.C. Because if you listen to the folks up here, you would think that they weren't even there, that they had nothing to do with it. This is the difference between being a governor and being in a legislature. See, because when something doesn't work in New Jersey, say, why didn't it get done? Why didn't you do it? You have to be responsible and accountable. And so on ISIS, the president needs to be a force that is trusted in the world. And on this, I agree with Marco. The president's not trusted. If you're the king of Jordan, if you're in the royal family in Saudi Arabia, and he's made this deal with Iran, which gives them $150 to wage a war and try to extend their empire across the Middle East, why would you want to do it now? But I will tell you this, when I stand across from King Hussein of Jordan, I say to him, you have a friend again, sir, who will stand with you to fight this fight. He'll change his mind.
Dr. Carson.
Well, first of all, I've been talking about we have to destroy their caliphate because that gives them legitimacy to go ahead with the global jihad. With their energy, because ISIS is the richest terrorist organization there is, take their oil, shut down all the mechanisms whereby they can disperse because they go after disaffected individuals from all over the place, and they are able to pay them. That makes it, as command centers are concerned, in Raqqa and to a lesser degree in Mosul, cut those off. Do the same kind of thing that we did with Sinjar a few weeks ago, working with our the Kurds, shut off the supply route, soften them up. Then we go in with special ops force to take them over. Those are things that work. But also, you know, this whole concept of boots on the ground. You know, we've got a full. If our military experts say we need boots on the ground, we should put boots on the ground and recognize there will be boots on the ground, and they'll be over here, and they'll be there. We don't get them out.
Thank you. Everyone stand by. We're only just beginning. Coming up, which candidates on this stage tonight want to